What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel, man. I hope you guys are having a great week. It's currently Wednesday, hump day. We are only days away from the last game of the NFL season. So what does that mean? It's time for an update in our NBA power rankings, man. With the end of the NFL season wrapping up, it is time for us to really start focusing on the NBA. So if you guys have noticed, I have done a couple other NBA power rankings in the past. I try to do them every couple of weeks, every month, with the season obviously now being the prominent sport that's going on right now. We will have them a lot more, maybe every other week, to really get a grasp of what's going on. But for now, I feel like it's okay to have them this far apart to get a good amount of reads on everything, right? So we're going to start with 10 and work our way up. We're going to also incorporate who we had last time at this spot and who is now. Give a little bit of a justification of why that has happened, why that move took place, and then go on from there. So at number 10, it was the Knicks. It is now the Sacramento Kings. The Sacramento Kings have dropped a few places in the Western Conference standings. They've also dropped a few games. They've still been a really solid team. If you look back at their past, they're obviously exceeding a lot of expectations from their just troubled history as a franchise. The past 2 years, they've really stepped up. But as of right now, still a top team in the NBA. But they've fallen down really just one spot, because at number 9, it was the Kings. Now it's the Bucks. The Bucks have continued to struggle, even with new head coach Doc Rivers. He's 1-3, somehow going to be, I believe, going to be the all-star head coach for the Eastern Conference team, which is pretty crazy. Obviously, Joe Mazzulla can't do it. He was there last year. Other guys haven't met the criteria, and so it looks like Doc Rivers, the guy who gets the job a little bit before midway of the season and doesn't have the best record so far, is going to be the head coach of the of the Eastern Conference All-Star team, man. So that's a bit crazy. The reason they they were 5, now they're 9. Obviously, like we mentioned, they fired their old head coach, Adrian Griffin, bring in Doc Rivers. They haven't looked much better on the defensive side of the ball, actually kind of looked a little bit worse, and so on and so forth with the offense. Haven't looked the best. They've dropped a lot of games, and so now they are the number 19, falling all the way from 5. Moving on to 8, a team that we had there last time that's no longer in the rankings, the Dallas Mavericks. They've been dealing with some injuries, haven't been playing the best ball of the season. They've also dropped a little bit in the Western Conference rankings as well. And so they fall off the list, and the team that takes their spot that was, what were they? They were the 7 seed. They fall one spot to the 8 seed. Philadelphia 76ers. The Philadelphia 76ers, in most recent news, lose Joel Embiid for at least a month. That was the report that came from Adrian Wojnarowski. He's going to be reassessed in 4 weeks. So about a month he'll be able to look at again by the team's personnel and training staff and see where he is in progressing. Until then, he will be out. And obviously they weren't playing. He was playing at a really high level, but the team around him hadn't been the best. They had dropped a few key games down the stretch. And so for me, adding that into the injury and losing your best player, you're going to fall down a spot. Probably for them, they'll be out of the next rankings, just because I don't see them winning a lot of games without Joel, right? Like, if you lose your best player, you are not going to be a better version of that team. Moving on to number 7, we had the 76ers at this spot last week, like we just mentioned. The new team at this spot are the New York Knicks. The New York Knicks, since trading for OG Anunoby, have been playing really well. The trade for OG Anunoby, I think a lot of us thought was going to be a good trade, but it turned out to be a great trade. Now, he is out with a injury. I believe it's a minor injury to his right elbow, but he's still playing really good ball for the New York Knicks. He fits the system and Tom Thibodeau and what he wants to do with that team. Very defensive heavy, scrappy players, smart players all around that team. Fits very well. It was a very good trade for the New York Knicks. Looking back on it, a trade that we thought was going to be decent has turned out really good for them. And so that is why I have them at 7, alongside them just winning a lot of games against really good teams. And so competing really well, all those things get them moved up from 10 to 7. And honestly, some of you guys maybe even agree that maybe they should be a little bit higher. But for right now, with the past 10 games in mind, we're going to move them up one spot. Moving on to number 6, it was the Clippers. It's still the Clippers for two reasons. One, yes, the Clippers have been playing amazing of sorts. Not of sorts. They've been playing amazing. There is no ifs, ands, or buts about it. But I went back and looked through their past 10 games that people have been talking about. They've been against lackluster teams. They've struggled against some lackluster teams. Now, they got the win. That's all that matters. But when you struggle against teams like they have played in the past 10 games, you kind of look at them and go, okay, what's going on here? Now, Kawhi Leonard, Paul George, James Harden. These are all names that you guys know are really good basketball players, a little bit on the older end. And so for me, if this power rankings, if we take it back to the first one, what we talked about was how they're playing now and a little bit of a projection side to this. Obviously, the Clippers have really bad luck. I don't think anybody can argue with that. And so on top of the old age, on top of the bad luck, but canceling out all of that with the good play in the past few games, even if it's been against some lackluster teams. They beat the Celtics, though, so I will say that. And they didn't just beat the Celtics. They beat the Celtics. They played really well against Boston in Boston. So that's a very good win for them. So for that, I don't drop them a spot, but I do keep them at the same place. Moving on to a team that was not in here. Let me make sure. Yeah, a team that was not in the previous rankings has now made the number 5 spot. It was the Bucks. Remember, we dropped them down, and the Cavs are the new 5th place team. The Cleveland Cavaliers have been playing really good basketball. They went from I saw a TikTok 16 and 14 to 31 and 16 in their past couple of games. That's more than the past couple. I just can't do the math right now. But they've been playing really well. They were in that stretch. They were not fully healthy by any stretch of the imagination. I still believe they have a couple guys out. But as more and more as they get healthy, they've been playing a lot better basketball. Now, do I think this team is still a star away? Yes. If you're watching this, I still think you guys are a player away. I know there's a lot of stuff going around with Donovan Mitchell now and different things like that, but I think the more this team wins, the more likely they are to keep Donovan Mitchell. And so for me personally, I have them at 5. Been playing really good ball. They're the number 2 seed in the Eastern Conference right now. So that's not something you just balk at. Like that's not real. Those are real. Those stats that you see for the Cleveland Cavaliers are real. Especially when they've been hurt and they've been and putting up numbers like that while you're hurt is impressive. And they haven't had an easy schedule either. Moving on from 5, we're now at number 4. It was the Oklahoma City Thunder. It is now the Minnesota Timberwolves. They dropped from number 2 to number 4. So the Timberwolves have struggled a bit as of late. Still playing really good ball. Anthony Edwards has hit a little bit of a slump compared to his standards that he put up at the beginning of the season. So I believe they should drop a few spots. There's really not these top 4 teams. You'll notice that there's not really a lot to talk about. It's kind of just based on the past few games that they've played, past 10 games, 15 games, injuries, different things like that. How they've looked, how bad their losses or how good their wins have been really is what is separating. You're splitting hairs with the top teams, right? Top 10 teams, really, you're splitting hairs. But it gets a little bit harder as you get into the top 5, top 4, etc. Right? And so the Minnesota Timberwolves dropped from 2 to 4. It was the Oklahoma City Thunder. It is now the Minnesota Timberwolves. Moving on to number 3. It was the Nuggets. It's still the Nuggets. They have Nikola Jokic. Anytime you have a player of that magnitude, if he's playing, you're in it, no matter what. No matter other injuries, anything like that. He makes everyone on that court better. They haven't had the most explosive, best, dominating wins this season that they had in the past, like last year when they won the championship. But a team that has just won the championship, that has that core, that nucleus together, is still playing well. So they deserve to be, in my opinion, in the top 3. And they haven't really fell behind anybody in terms of like where they can't catch back up in the rankings, I should say. Moving on to the number 2 team in this power rankings, excuse me. It's a little crazy to say. It was the Timberwolves, like we just mentioned. It's now the Thunder. The Thunder are real. It's scary hours in Oklahoma City, man. If they can keep that core together for a long time, Yeah, they're going to be real in the Western Conference, and I think if Denver also can keep what they have together, it's going to be really fun to watch them and Oklahoma City battle it out in a playoff series. A lot of these teams, Kings, Nuggets, anybody in the Western Conference, Clippers, Nuggets would be a fun series. The Western Conference race is going to be really fun this year. The Western Conference playoffs, barring health, Phoenix is a team that hasn't made this list yet, or they made it last month. They didn't make it this month. It's going to be a really fun race in the Western Conference. But at the number 2 team, it's the Thunder. They've been playing really well. Young team, have the legs. The one thing that you can say is they don't really have playoff experience. So if they do end up making it and the season just doesn't completely fall off, that is a worry that you could think of, that you could talk about, and I'm sure will be talked about. But as of right now, they're the number 2 team in the NBA. The number 1 team in the NBA might be a little controversial. I tried to take my homerism out of it. I put it in my Discord channel with all my friends, and we talked about it. It's the Boston Celtics. I think we can still all agree that the Boston Celtics are the number 1 team in the NBA. Yes, there's a couple other teams as of right now that you might be able to plug and place into that spot. But remember, this is not only a right now, this is also a bit of a projection forward into the rest of the season and things like that. And so the Boston Celtics are still number 1. They have dropped a few games with a little bit of a head scratcher. They lost to the Lakers without LeBron and AD. That was like, what's going on? They've lost to a couple other teams where it's just like, but they still only have 10 losses and they have 32 wins. So they're still a dominant team. They play Atlanta, as you guys are seeing this, I believe Wednesday. They play them on Wednesday. So we'll see what happens with that. But yeah, that is the power rankings for the NBA update. Or that is the power rankings for the NBA update. And I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out.